Now we're getting into our good old activity-based costing. I've got some just basic assumptions to memorize, some facts, phrases, whatever you want to call them, for multiple choice questions. I'll start off by saying the basic assumption of ABC is that products or services require the performance of activities, and activities consume resources. I mean, a lot of these kind of make sense, right? Well, you have to perform activities to use activity-based costing. These activities have to consume resources. Okay, nothing groundbreaking, but make sure you know that. Now, activity-based costing can be used for internal purposes, but not external. Okay, that's good to know, right? Remember, we use traditional costing for external purposes, so just a fun fact to memorize. Another name for activity-based costing is transaction-based costing. Not much to do there other than know that. ABC can be applied for either job order or process costing, what we just talked about, right? So we can use this process, which we will see and go over questions with either process or job order. When indirect costs are a high percentage of total costs, a company would benefit from ABC system where costs can be broken out for further analysis. We don't want lump sum costs. We want to break them out. We want to understand them as a whole. We want to see where everything's going. And lastly, the expense of obtaining cost data is relatively high for activity-based costing. If you're a small little factory, economies of scale and all that, you're probably not going to want to use activity-based costing. However, if you're super complex operations, high scale, such as Walmart, then you're going to want to probably, see where everything's coming from, right? See where all of our costs are getting assigned. Now, volume-based production, mentioned this a little bit prior. This determines how to allocate costs once cost drivers have already been established. It assigns costs based on the volume produced of a good or a service. Just know that for multiple choice questions. Lastly, allocating service costs with activity-based costing, we technically have two methods, the direct method and step-down method. Just memorize points about them. So again, under ABC, right, under activity-based costing, there are two methods. We have the direct method. It's the most widely used and least complicated. And the step-down method is more sophisticated and used in complex situations. Not going to be doing examples of these. It's not really worth our time. Just know these about the methods used under activity-based costing. And that is for service costs specifically. Well, this may look like a lot, and it is. There's no denying that, but I am going to work with you to demystify it and break it all down. We've got an example of activity-based costing. Now, we'll look at this, and what's the question? Well, I want to read that first. What is the total cost per pound for the premium coffee using the new activity-based costing method? So we're reading this. If we're taking the exam, we want to read this first because there's a lot of possibly fluff, a lot of, right, just information overload. We want to read this so we know if there's a formula we need to write down. We want to make sure that we're thinking about any possible tricks, any commonly seen, right, things they throw in there to mess with our heads. The activity-based costing, we want to do that. So we want, generally for all of our allocation questions, we want, okay, what are we allocating, right? What's the joint overhead to allocate? And then, how are we doing it? So actually, I'm going to quickly scan this before even reading it. I'm just going to quickly scan it, and I want to highlight where is that overhead amount that we want to make sure we know. Okay, what's the total cost per pound? Okay, it looks like we've got overhead right here. Now, is it both of these? Is it one of these? We'll read more about it, but just want to underline those. These are important. And then we want for premium coffee. Now you see here we have premium, regular. We'll probably, figure it out for regular as well. Right? We're probably going to allocate based on these methods. Over, let us read the rest of the information. The New Wave company is considering a new method for allocating overhead to its two products, regular and premium coffee beans. Currently, the New Wave is using the traditional method to allocate overhead, meaning What we talked about before, right? They're just doing it equally, just allocating it, not really thinking too much about it. So, in which cost driver is direct labor costs. However, it's interested in using two different drivers. So we are going to allocate based on machine hours for separating and roasting the beans and the pounds of coffee for packing and shipping. Machine hours for the current month are 700 hours. Direct labor cost per pound of coffee is $1.25. And direct materials cost per pound of coffee is $1.50. There are 1,000 pounds of coffee packed and shipped for the current month. And we can see that 500 and 500 makes 1,000. At least it did the last time I checked. If math has changed, then yes, I got to relearn it. The following data is available here. Okay, here's our 700 hours. It's made up of 150 and 550. Awesome. Okay, and total overhead is 5,000. You see here, right? That's consisting of our 3,500 and 1,500. So it's all coming together. We're kind of tying together our numbers, seeing where they relate. Right? This is not new information. It's just putting these two together. This is not new information. It's just putting these two together. Nothing too crazy. So we want the total cost per pound. Now keep this in mind. This is going to be a little bit of a trick. We want the total cost, meaning all of the cost, and per pound. So total cost is going to include materials, labor, and overhead. Keep that in mind. We're not just dealing with overhead. We will deal with overhead. We also have labor costs and material costs here. Don't forget to include those. And then per pound, right? We're not doing an aggregate. We're not doing a total cost. We're doing per pound. So we're going to have to divide by the amount of pounds at some point during the question. Understanding and recognizing these tricks before you dive into it definitely help you to not get distracted or have the question trick you. So here the question requires us to find applied overhead using activity-based costing, not traditional costing. And this is only used for internal reporting. This example, there are two cost pools that make up the $5,000 overhead. We've got separating beans and roasting. Here we need to find the ratio for each to allocate overhead to the premium coffee. Good for us. Glad it's up to us to do it because we are capable and get it done. All right, so we want to allocate the overhead from the separating and roasting component as well as the packing and shipping. And we're doing this just for premium coffee, as I mentioned. So what's our process? Well, we find our overhead amount, and then we get the percentage that is premium. Overhead amount for separating and roasting is 3,500. This is the percentage that's premium. 550 divided by the total. Same with packing and shipping. The overhead cost is 1,500. That's what you're allocating. And then what's the percent that belongs to premium? 500 divided by 1,000. And you'll see this trend over and over with all these allocation methods. It's just what's the overhead you're allocating, then what's the percentage that belongs to the activity, right? Or to the specific item we want to allocate to. So we do that, right? We get our percentages, then we multiply that by the total. We get our overhead. So total overhead applied using our activity-based costing method is 3,500. So that is a result of the proportion of the 3,500 and the proportion of the 1,500, which is coincidentally gets us back to 3,500, which is a number we had already. So that is our total overhead that belongs to premium. Okay, now what's the total overhead per pound? Since we want it per pound, how many lines am I going to underline this with? Keep going. Okay, well, we have 500 pounds of premium coffee. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, question, for giving us that. So that gets us to $7 of overhead per pound. 3,500 total overhead allocated to premium divided by 500 pounds. That gets us $7 per pound of overhead. And as we know, total cost of goods manufactured is direct labor, direct material, and overhead. So we have our direct labor of 125, our direct materials of 150. Add those together and get 275. 275 plus 7. Again, this is cost of goods manufactured. Total cost of production is materials, labor, and overhead per unit, per pound, 975 total. We did it. To recap, all these questions, whether it's activity-based or the other allocation methods we'll see, again, I'm going to beat it to death because no one did for me and I struggled. Find what you're allocating overhead wise, the total amount, and then how are you allocating it? Get the percentage that belongs to what you want to allocate. I hope you're sitting there with a smile on your face, as I am. Sitting here, I'm happy because we got through it. We're doing well. And this will not mess us up on the exam.
Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.